A janitor father fixed the billionaire's daughter's toy and got much more than he expected. The alarm clock went off at 5 in the morning, as always. Ethan rolled over in his narrow bed and turned it off before it could wake the boy in the next room. His eyes burned with exhaustion, but he knew there was no time for 5 more minutes of sleep. He got up silently, put on his faded blue uniform, and peeked through the crack in his son's door. The 6-year-old boy was sleeping, clutching a worn-out teddy bear, his breathing peaceful. Ethan smiled and gently closed the door. In the tiny bathroom, he splashed his face with cold water and looked at himself in the cracked mirror. 32 years old, but the lines around his eyes told a longer story. Ever since Sarah died in childbirth, it was just him and the boy against the world. The cleaning company's van picked him up at 6 o'clock sharp. During the 40-minute drive to Hillcrest Manor, Ethan closed his eyes and thought of his son. He needed to save money for school. The local public schools were terrible, and he dreamed of giving the boy a better chance. When the wrought iron gates opened, revealing the mansion, Ethan was still impressed. 3 stories of light-colored stone, gardens that looked like they were out of a magazine, a fountain in the center of the courtyard. It was another universe. He entered through the back door as always. The industrial kitchen was sparkling clean, even before he started working. Everything there was perfect, cold, and impersonal. "You're early today," said Margaret, the housekeeper, without looking up from her to-do list. "I always arrive at the same time." She handed him a piece of paper. "Mrs. Blackwood wants the office spotless by 10. She has a meeting." Ethan took the paper and went up the marble stairs. His steps echoed in the immense hall, where expensive paintings looked at him without seeing. That's how he felt there, invisible. On the 2nd floor, he passed by the little girl's room. The door was ajar, and he glimpsed bright, messy blonde hair spread across the silk pillow. Emily Blackwood, 5 years old, slept alone in that room the size of Ethan's entire apartment. He reached the office and started working. He vacuumed the Persian rug, dusted the mahogany shelves, and wiped the crystal objects. Every movement was precise, silent. He had learned to be a ghost. At 8 in the morning, he heard the high heels of Veronica Blackwood coming down the stairs. She was on the phone, her sharp voice echoing down the hallway. "I don't care if he's sick. I want those reports on my desk by noon, or you can all find another job." Ethan knew that tone. Veronica treated everyone like that, employees and suppliers, even her own daughter. At 40, she ran a financial empire with an iron fist. They said she had become even tougher after her husband died in a car accident 2 years earlier. He finished cleaning the office and went down to the hall. Veronica was standing in front of the huge mirror, adjusting her navy blue blazer. Her brown hair was tied in a perfect bun, her makeup flawless, her posture erect. She was beautiful, but there was something cold in her eyes. "You," she said, without turning around. "You forgot to wipe the banister yesterday." Ethan stopped. He was sure he had cleaned everything. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Blackwood. I'll do it right now." "Do it." She picked up her Hermes bag and walked to the door. "Margaret, where is Margaret?" The housekeeper appeared, running from the kitchen. "I'm here, ma'am." "Emily will be with the nanny all day. I have meetings until late. If she asks for me, tell her I'm working for her future." Veronica left without a backward glance. The sound of the Porsche disappearing down the road left the mansion even quieter. Margaret sighed and shook her head. "That child," she muttered, before returning to the kitchen. Ethan went upstairs to clean the already clean banister. When he reached the 2nd floor, he heard a faint little voice coming from Emily's room. "Mommy? Mommy, did you leave already?" He stopped in front of the ajar door. The girl was sitting up in bed, her messy blonde hair and large light blue eyes, searching for someone who wasn't there. "Daddy, you're not here either." Her voice was a whisper filled with a sadness no 5-year-old should know. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He remembered his own son waking up alone so many mornings, waiting for his father to come home from work. Emily came out of her room in a nightgown and pink slippers. Her little feet made a soft patter on the cold marble as she went down the stairs, a porcelain doll clutched to her chest. "Margaret," she called out, her voice echoing in the empty hall. "I'm in the kitchen, dear," the housekeeper shouted, but Emily didn't go to the kitchen. Instead, she sat on the bottom step of the staircase and hugged her doll tightly. She just sat there, too small for that immense space, waiting for attention that wouldn't come. Ethan watched the scene from a distance and recognized something familiar. It was the same loneliness he saw on his son's face when he thought no one was looking. The difference was that his boy had little, but he had love. Emily had everything, except what she needed most. The morning passed slowly. Ethan cleaned empty rooms, silent hallways and bathrooms that no one used. Every now and then, he would cross paths with Emily, wandering through the house like a lost soul. She would greet the staff politely, but no one stopped to talk. Everyone was afraid of Veronica. At lunchtime, he sat on the back steps of the kitchen and ate the sandwich he had brought from home. Through the window, he saw Emily in the garden, playing alone near the fountain. She was making her doll walk along the marble edge, inventing conversations only she could hear. "It's not fair," Margaret murmured, appearing beside him with a cup of coffee. "A child shouldn't grow up like this." "Like what?" "Like a ghost in her own home." She took a sip of her coffee. "Her mother only shows up to scold her or to take pictures for magazines. The girl spends the whole day talking to herself." Ethan continued watching Emily. She had stopped playing and was now just staring at the fountain's water, her shoulders slumped. And her father. What was he like? Charles was different. He adored his daughter. He played with her, told her stories, took her for walks. When he died, it was as if the light went out in this house. And Veronica. She threw herself into her work. I think it's her way of dealing with the pain. But she forgot that her daughter lost her father too. In the afternoon, while vacuuming the living room rug, Ethan heard Emily trying to talk to her nanny. "Claire, can you play with me?" "I'm busy, sweetie." "Go draw for a little while." "But I want to play with someone. Draw something pretty for your mother." Emily was quiet for a moment. "Mommy doesn't like my drawings." "Of course she does." "No, she doesn't. She always says she's too busy to look." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of the vacuum cleaner. Ethan turned it off and pretended to adjust something. "Then draw something for me," Claire said, without much enthusiasm. "Okay." Emily's little footsteps faded away, and Ethan went back to work. But he couldn't stop thinking about the girl. At home, his son sometimes complained that he worked too much, but at least he knew he was loved. Emily lived in a palace but was emotionally an orphan. The day ended as always. Ethan put away his equipment, changed his clothes, and waited for the van at the back door. As he passed by the garden, he saw Emily still sitting near the fountain, now with a drawing pad on her lap. For a second, their eyes met. She watched him with curiosity, perhaps wondering who this man in the blue uniform was. He gave a discreet wave, and something like a smile flickered across the girl's face. Then the van arrived, and Ethan left, taking with him the image of a little blonde girl lost in a world of cold marble. On the way home, he looked out the window and thought of his son. Soon he would be hugging the boy, hearing about his day, helping him with his homework. They didn't have much, but they had each other. Emily had everything money could buy, but nothing that truly mattered. And maybe, just maybe, he could do something about that, even if he was invisible. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the mansion with the same routine as always. A quick breakfast at home, a kiss on his sleeping son's forehead, the van at 6 o'clock sharp. But this time, something had changed inside him. The image of the little blonde girl sitting alone by the fountain wouldn't leave his mind. Margaret greeted him with a distracted nod and handed him the task list. The office, the dining room, the guest rooms. The usual routine. But Ethan found himself looking out the window several times, searching for Emily in the garden. She appeared around 9 in the morning, still in her pajamas and slippers. She was carrying the same porcelain doll from the day before and a small wicker basket that seemed too big for her little hands. Ethan paused the vacuum to watch more closely. Emily sat on the grass near the fountain and took a few things out of the basket. Dried leaves, flower petals, colorful pebbles. She began arranging them in small piles, as if organizing an elaborate game. "Now you're going to have dinner," she said to the doll, pretending to serve leaves on an invisible plate. "So but you have to eat everything, or Mommy will get mad." Her voice reached Ethan through the open window. There was something sad in the way she played, imitating a life she didn't have. "Aren't you going to eat, Daddy?" Emily continued, looking at an empty space beside her. "Oh, you're working again. That's okay, I'll wait." Ethan felt his chest tighten. The girl was playing family, but a family where the parents were never present. He turned off the vacuum and decided to finish cleaning later. He went down the stairs silently and out into the garden through the back door. Emily didn't see him approach. She was too busy building little houses with the leaves and telling a story to her doll. "Once upon a time, there was a princess who lived alone in a very big castle," she whispered. "She had everything she wanted, but she was always sad because she had no one to play with." Ethan approached slowly, making just enough noise not to startle her. Emily looked up with her clear eyes and saw him standing a few feet away. She immediately hugged the doll to her chest as if it were a shield. "Hi," he said in the softest voice he could manage. "Hi," she replied, almost in a whisper. "Can I ask what you're building there?" Emily looked at the piles of leaves and then back at him. It's a city for Bella." She held up the doll. "So she doesn't like being alone. Bella is a beautiful name." Ethan knelt and getting down to her level. "My son has a teddy bear named Bruno. They're best friends." "You have a son?" Emily's eyes widened with curiosity. "I do. He's 6, just a little bit older than you." "What's he like?" Ethan smiled. It had been so long since anyone had asked simple questions about his life. "He's funny. He likes to tell silly jokes and laugh until he can't stop. Yesterday he asked why fish don't take baths." Emily tilted her head, interested. "Why?" "Because they're already always wet." She didn't laugh, but something like a smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "That is a silly one," she said, but there was a playful sparkle in her eyes. "Can I help you with Bella's city?" Ethan asked. Emily hesitated, looking toward the house as if expecting someone to appear and forbid it. "Won't you get in trouble?" "Not if I'm quick." She nodded slowly and made room for him on the grass beside her. Ethan sat down and observed her creation. It was impressive how a 5-year-old could create something so elaborate. "This is Bella's house," Emily explained, pointing to a pile of red leaves. "And this is where she works. And this over here is where she goes when she's sad." "Where she goes when she's sad?" "Under the big tree." Emily pointed to an imaginary shadow. "It's a secret place where no one can bother her." Ethan nodded, understanding perfectly. Everyone needs a place like that. He picked up some yellow leaves. "Can I make a candy shop? Every place needs a candy shop." Emily smiled for real this time, and Ethan felt as if he had won an award. They spent the next 20 minutes building together. Emily became less shy, explaining where everything should go, making up stories about the city's invisible inhabitants. Ethan listened attentively, asking questions and making suggestions that made her giggle softly. "You know what's missing," he said, looking at the fountain. "What?" "A boat. Every city needs a harbor." Emily looked at the crystal clear water of the fountain. "But we don't have a boat." Ethan stood up and walked to a nearby tree. He chose a large, green leaf, carefully folded the edges, and returned to her side. "Now we do." He placed the leaf in the water. It floated perfectly, gently bobbing in the fountain's soft current. "It's magic," Emily whispered, her eyes shining. "Want to make another one?" She nodded enthusiastically. Together, they made a small fleet of leaf boats. Emily clapped every time one of them sailed to the other side of the fountain. "My daddy used to make boats for me," she said suddenly, her voice growing quieter. Before he went away. Was he good at it?" "He was good at everything." Emily carefully fished out one of the boats. "He taught me things, how to build sandcastles, how to plant flowers, how to make funny voices for the characters in books. He sounds like he was a very special dad." He was. She looked at the water. "I miss him all the time." Ethan didn't know what to say. How could you comfort a child who had lost so much? Instead of words, he picked another leaf, and made a different kind of boat, with a tiny sail made of grass. "This one is special," he said, placing the boat in the water. "It's a wishing boat." "How does it work?" "You make a wish and let it sail. If it reaches the other side without tipping over, your wish might come true." Emily watched the little boat sail slowly across the fountain. It wobbled a few times but reached the other side intact. "It worked," she said, smiling. "What did you wish for?" Emily looked at him seriously. "It's a secret." But it was about having someone to play with. At that moment, Ethan heard Margaret calling his name from inside the house. It was time to get back to work. "I have to go," he said, getting up. "Will you be back tomorrow?" "I will." Can you make more boats with me?" "If you'd like." Emily nodded several times, hugging the doll to her chest. "Bella liked you too," she said. "She doesn't like many people." "I'm honored." Ethan went back inside the house with a heart lighter than it had felt in weeks. The rest of the day passed more quickly, and he found himself counting the minutes until the next day. The next morning, Emily was waiting for him in the garden. This time, she had brought crayons and paper. "I made a drawing," she said, running to him as soon as she saw him. It was a simple drawing made with childish strokes, but Ethan recognized it immediately. A man in a blue uniform and a little blonde girl making boats in a fountain. "It's beautiful," he said, genuinely moved. "It's for you. To take home and show your son." "Are you sure?" "And I'm sure." Emily blushed a little. "What's his name?" "Sam." "Sam." She repeated the name, as if testing how it sounded. "Can you tell him I said hi?" "Of course, I can." Over the next few days, this became a routine. Emily always found an excuse to be in the garden when Ethan was working near the windows. Sometimes she would just wave from a distance. Other times, he managed to get a few minutes to talk with her. Emily started asking questions about life outside the mansion. "What's the apartment where you live like?" she asked one afternoon. "It's small," Ethan answered. "You could walk from one end to the other in 10 steps. "Only 10? Emily tried to imagine it. "But do you both fit inside?" "We fit. We have a living room, a small kitchen, a room for Sam and one for me. It's cozy." "What's cozy?" Ethan thought about how to explain. "It's when a place is small, but full of love, when you feel safe and happy, even if it's not big or fancy." Emily was quiet for a moment. "This house isn't cozy," she said. "It's big and fancy, but it doesn't have much love." Ethan felt his chest tighten again. "Your mother loves you," he said. "She just doesn't know how to show it." "How do you show Sam?" "1,000 little ways. I tell him stories before bed. I make his favorite breakfast on the weekends. I listen when he wants to talk about his day. I hug him when he's sad. My mum is always busy," Emily said. "But do you think she misses me when she's working?" "I'm sure she does." Emily smiled, and Ethan realized he had planted a small seed of hope in her heart. "Can I show you something?" she asked a few days later. Ethan looked around to make sure no one was watching and nodded. Emily led him to a corner of the garden, where there was a small iron table with 2 chairs. "Sometimes I come here and pretend I'm having tea with someone," she said. "Can you pretend too?" They sat in the chairs, and Emily served imaginary tea in invisible cups. "How's the tea?" she asked. "Delicious." "The best I've ever had," she laughed, a crystal clear sound that made Ethan smile too. "Would Sam like to have tea with me?" Emily asked. "I think he'd love that, but he might prefer hot chocolate." "I like hot chocolate too." Emily pretended to drink from her cup. "Can you and him come have hot chocolate with me one day?" Ethan hesitated. He knew that could never happen. Veronica would never allow it. "That would be very nice," he said without lying. "But sometimes things are complicated between grown-ups." "Because of money?" The question surprised him. "Why do you think that?" "Margaret always says that people are different because of money. That some have a lot and others have little, and that means they can't be friends." Ethan knelt to get to her level. "You know what I think. I think people's hearts are the same, no matter how much money they have. What matters is if they are kind." "You're kind," Emily said, "and Sam must be too because you taught him." You're kind too, Emily. Very kind. She blushed and hugged her doll. Can I tell you a secret? She whispered. Of course. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I pretend that you and Sam live here with me, that we have breakfast together and play in the garden, and that you tell me stories before bed like you do for him. Ethan felt his eyes well up, but he managed to smile. That's a very beautiful secret. You won't tell anyone. Never. Emily smiled and went back to serving imaginary tea. And in that moment, sitting in that secret corner of the garden, they were no longer the invisible janitor and the lonely little girl. They were just two friends sharing a moment of simple happiness. A bond had been born, silent and precious, growing like a flower in the middle of the coldness of that mansion. It had been 2 weeks since Ethan and Emily had created their little secret routine. Every morning after Veronica left for work, the girl would appear in the garden with something new to show him. A new drawing, a flower she had found, or simply the desire to make more leaf boats in the fountain. That Thursday, Emily was different, quieter than usual, clutching something to her chest as she walked toward the secret corner where they always met. Hi, Emily, Ethan said, wiping his hands on a cleaning cloth. Are you okay? She nodded, but her clear eyes seemed filled with a familiar sadness. It was the same look he saw in his own son when Sam missed the mother he never knew. I brought something to show you, she said, her voice low, but it's very special. Do you promise you'll take good care of it? I promise. Emily sat on the grass and slowly revealed what she was hiding. It was a small wooden horse, small enough to fit in the palms of her hands. The wood had a golden hue, polished by time and gentle touches. The mane was made of light brown thread, and there were tiny details carved into its hooves and muzzle. So this is Thunder, she said, holding the toy with the care of someone carrying something precious. My daddy made him for me. Ethan sat beside her, impressed by the beauty of the craftsmanship. Even though it was simple, you could see it had been made with love and dedication. He made this himself. He did. Emily ran her fingers through the horse's mane. He was always making things for me. He said the best things aren't bought, they're made with your own hands. She placed the little horse on the grass between them, as if introducing a friend. Daddy worked a lot, just like you, but on the weekends, we played together. Thunder was our favorite game. How did you play? Emily's face lit up, and for the first time since Ethan had met her, she looked truly happy. Daddy made different voices for him. She picked up the horse and made it gallop in the air. Thunder was very brave and strong, but he was also gentle. He rescued princesses, helped other animals in the forest, and always came home in time for dinner. Emily began to act it out, moving the horse with natural grace. Look, Emily, he would say like this. She changed her voice, trying to imitate her father. Thunder has returned from a very important adventure. He saved a little bird that fell from its nest. Ethan smiled, able to picture the scene, a father and daughter on the living room floor, creating entire worlds with a simple wooden toy. And then, what happened next? Then I would ask, how did he save it? And Daddy would make up the whole story. Emily made the horse run through the grass. Sometimes Thunder had to cross dangerous rivers, or climb very high mountains, or face evil dragons. And he always succeeded. Always. Emily nodded with certainty, because Daddy said that when you do things for love, you always find a way. Ethan felt a lump in his throat. He could see Charles Blackwood in those words, a father who, despite all his wealth, understood what truly mattered. Do you know what my favorite story was? Emily continued. Which one? The story of when Thunder found a family of little horses lost in the forest. She held the toy with affection. They were scared and hungry, and Thunder shared his food with them. Daddy said that story was about how important it is to take care of each other. Emily stopped playing for a moment, her gaze distant. After Daddy went away, I kept playing with Thunder. But it's not the same. I don't know how to make up stories like he did. I'm sure you do. No, I don't. She shook her head. I try, but I get sad because he's not here to listen. Ethan slowly held out his hand, and Emily placed the little horse in his palm. It was surprisingly heavy for its size, made of a fine wood that had been carefully crafted. He could feel the love in every detail, the rounded edges to not hurt his daughter's little hands, the perfect proportions for a child to hold, the smooth finish that came from hours of care. "Your father was very talented," he said, handing the toy back. "Daddy was good at everything." Emily hugged Thunder to her chest. "He taught me how to plant flowers, how to draw, how to read stories with different voices. And every night before I went to sleep, he would put Thunder on the little table next to my bed and say, 'Thunder will take care of you while I'm not here.'" "And does he?" "He does." Emily smiled sadly. "And when I have nightmares, I hug him really tight and remember Daddy's voice saying everything will be okay." Ethan had to swallow the lump in his throat. He thought of his own son, of how Sam held his teddy bear during difficult times. Some objects carried more than just wood or fabric. They carried love, memory, the presence of those who were gone. "Gaza, can I tell you a secret?" Emily whispered. "Of course. Sometimes I talk to Thunder and pretend it's Daddy talking to me." She blushed. "It's silly. I know he can't really talk, but—" "It's not silly," Ethan interrupted gently. "It's a way of keeping your dad close to you." "Is that really it?" Her eyes lit up. "So Margaret said it was a foolish child's thing." "Margaret is wrong," Ethan said firmly. "When we love someone very much, a part of that person always stays with us. Thunder is a way for your dad to keep taking care of you." Emily hugged the little horse even tighter. "Do you think Daddy knows I still play with Thunder?" "I'm sure he knows. And I bet he's happy to see you taking such good care of the gift he made." "I really do." Emily looked at the toy. "I clean him every week, and I never let him fall, and I always put him in a safe place when I go to sleep." "Your father would be proud." Emily smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her whole face. "Do you want to hear one of Thunder's stories?" "So I can tell it the way Daddy used to. I'd love to hear it." Emily perked up and began to act it out, moving the little horse across the grass. Her voice changed tone as she played different characters, and Ethan realized she had inherited her father's talent for storytelling. "Once upon a time, there was a very brave little horse who lived in a magical forest," she began. As he listened, Ethan watched how Emily transformed. The sad, lonely girl he had met gave way to a creative and expressive child, full of imagination. Thunder was not just a toy, it was the bridge that connected her to happy memories, to her father's love, to the part of her that still knew how to dream. When the story ended, Emily kissed the top of the horse's head. "Daddy always did that at the end," she explained. "He said it was so Thunder would know he had done a good job." Ethan felt his eyes well up and had to blink several times. There was so much tenderness in that simple gesture, so much love preserved in a tradition that Emily kept alive. "Thank you for sharing Thunder with me," he said, his voice a little hoarse. "It was an honor to meet him." "You're the first person I've shown him to." Emily held the horse with both hands. "Not even Mommy knows about the stories. She never asks. Maybe one day you can tell her too." "Maybe." Emily stood up and carefully put Thunder in her dress pocket. "Now he needs to rest." "Daddy always said that even heroes need to sleep." As Emily walked back to the house, Ethan sat on the grass for a few more minutes. He had just witnessed something sacred, a little girl sharing her most prized possession, the last tangible piece of the father she loved so much. Thunder was not just a wooden horse. It was hope. It was memory. It was love that had endured death and time. It was the most valuable treasure Emily owned, and she had trusted him enough to share it. Ethan would never feel more honored by that trust. The day started like any other. Emily appeared in the garden shortly after Veronica left for work, carrying Thunder in the pocket of her yellow dress. Her clear eyes shone with the anticipation of another morning of secret games with Ethan. "I made up a new story today," she said, carefully taking out the wooden horse. "Thunder is going to save all the sad little horses in the world." Ethan smiled, pausing his cleaning of the ground floor windows to join her in their secret corner of the garden. "First, that sounds like a very important mission." "It is." Emily sat on the grass and placed Thunder in front of her. "He's going to travel everywhere, and every time he finds a crying horse, he's going to make it laugh again." She began to act it out, moving the toy across the grass with the same delicacy as always. Ethan watched, impressed as always by the girl's imagination. Thunder galloped among the flowers, climbed the small stones of the fountain and saved imaginary ants. "Look, he found a very sad little horse here near the rose bush," Emily said, making Thunder approach a red rose. It was a beautiful scene to behold. The little blonde girl focused on her game, the morning sun illuminating her hair, Thunder dancing in her small hands. For a moment, Ethan could almost forget the coldness of the mansion and the loneliness that surrounded Emily. "What is Thunder going to say to the sad little horse?" he asked. "He's going to say that." Emily lifted Thunder higher, wanting to make him fly over the rose bush. That's when it happened. Her 5-year-old hands, still too small to hold on tightly, lost their grip. Thunder slipped from her fingers and fell. The sound was small, almost insignificant, a dry little thud of wood hitting the stone edge of the fountain. But when Emily looked to where Thunder had fallen, her world collapsed. The little horse was broken in half. The head had separated from the body, and one of the front legs was chipped. The brown threads of the mane were scattered across the wet stone. "No, no, no," Emily cried, falling to her knees beside the pieces. "Thunder, Thunder, I'm so sorry." She tried to fit the pieces together with her trembling little hands, as if she could magically make them stick back together. Tears began to stream down her face, thick and desperate. "Please, Thunder, please be okay," she sobbed, clutching the pieces to her chest. Ethan immediately knelt beside her, his heart breaking at the sight of the girl's despair. "Emily, calm down. Let's see what we can do." "He's broken," she cried. "I broke Thunder." "Daddy is going to be mad at me." "Your dad would never be mad at you. It was an accident." But Emily couldn't hear him. She was in a complete panic, holding the pieces of the horse as if her life depended on it. "I promised I would take good care of him. I promised." The tears were falling so hard she could barely speak. "So now he's gone, just like Daddy." The pain in her voice was heart-wrenching. Ethan wanted to comfort her, to hug her, to tell her everything would be okay, but he knew he couldn't. Not there, not openly. Emily suddenly stood up, still holding the pieces of Thunder. "Mommy!" she yelled, running towards the house. "Mommy, please." Ethan followed her from a distance, worried. Had Veronica come back early, or was Emily looking for Margaret? But when he reached the back door, he heard the cold voice he knew so well. "Emily, what is all this screaming about?" Veronica was in the entrance hall, still wearing her grey office blazer. She must have come back to get a forgotten document. Her expression was one of barely concealed irritation. Emily ran to her, tripping over her own feet, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy, Thunder broke," she sobbed, holding out the pieces of the horse. "Can you fix him?" "Please, can you fix him?" Veronica looked at the wooden pieces in her daughter's hands, with an expression of someone who didn't understand why it was important. "Emily, stop crying. It's just an old toy." "It's not just a toy," Emily cried even harder. "It's Thunder. Daddy made him for me. Honey, these things happen." Veronica sighed, impatient. "Toys break. It's normal." "But can you fix him?" Emily insisted, her voice full of desperate hope. "Or have someone fix him." Veronica took the pieces from her daughter's hand and examined them quickly, as if she were evaluating a financial report. "Emily, this can't be fixed. It's too broken." She handed the pieces back with indifference. "Don't cry, sweetie. I'll buy you another one, a much better one." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily suddenly stopped crying, looking at her mother with an expression of total shock. "Another one?" she whispered. "Of course. I'll have someone buy you a new horse, a nicer, more modern one. The kind that makes noise and moves on its own." "But I don't want another one." Emily's voice was breaking again. "I want Thunder. Daddy made him for me." "Emily, your father made that years ago. You barely even remembered it." Veronica spoke as if explaining something obvious to a stubborn child. "A new toy will be much better." "I do remember," Emily shouted, clutching the pieces of Thunder to her chest. "I remember everything. The stories, the voices, the way Daddy made him fly." "Don't be so dramatic, Emily." Veronica glanced at her watch. "I'm late for an important meeting, Margaret." "Where is Margaret? I don't want you to buy another one." Emily was screaming now, desperate. "I want my thunder. I want the one Daddy made." "That's enough, Emily." Veronica lost her patience completely. "Stop this scene over a piece of old wood. You're too old for these tantrums." Ethan, hiding behind the kitchen door, felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. How could a mother be so cold? How could she not understand that those pieces of old wood were everything Emily had left of her father? Emily looked at her mother for a long moment, silent tears streaming down her face. Then, without another word, she turned and ran up the stairs. "Margaret?" Veronica shouted, irritated. "Take care of Emily. And throw away these pieces of wood before she hurts herself." Veronica grabbed the folder she had come back for and left through the front door, her heels echoing on the marble. The sound of the Porsche speeding away left the house submerged in a heavy silence. Margaret appeared from the laundry room, shaking her head. "Where is the little one?" she asked. "In her room," Ethan answered, stepping out from behind the door. His voice was hoarse with restrained emotion. "What happened this time?" Ethan looked at the pieces of thunder scattered on the hall floor, where Emily had dropped them when she ran upstairs. "Her heart broke," he said simply. Margaret followed his gaze and saw the pieces of wood. "Oh, no." "Charles's little horse." "You knew it." "Of course, I knew." Margaret bent down and carefully collected the pieces. Charles spent weeks making that for her. Every night, after Emily fell asleep, he'd be in his workshop sanding, carving, painting. He said he wanted to make something that would last forever. Ethan felt his chest tighten even more. "And now?" Margaret shook her head sadly. "Now the girl has lost the last thing her father made especially for her, and her mother has no idea what that means." From upstairs came the muffled sound of inconsolable crying. Emily was alone in her room, crying not just for thunder but for everything he represented. The mornings of play, the made-up stories, the goodnight kisses, the love of a father who would never come back. Ethan looked at the staircase, every fiber of his being wanting to go up and comfort her, but he knew he couldn't, not officially. Not without risking the job he so desperately needed. So he stood there, helpless, listening to the little girl's heart break into pieces as small as thunders. And for the first time since he had started working at the mansion, Ethan felt real anger. Anger at a world where money was more important than love, where efficiency was valued more than compassion, where a mother could be so blind to her own daughter's pain. That night, Emily slept, hugging the broken pieces of the little horse, and Ethan knew that something precious had been lost forever, or at least that's what he thought. The mansion was plunged into the silence of the early morning, as Ethan finished putting away the last of the cleaning equipment. It was almost 2 in the morning, and even Margaret had already gone to bed. The day had been long and heavy, with the image of Emily crying echoing in his mind at every moment. Before leaving through the back door, Ethan stopped in the entrance hall. There, on the marble floor where Emily had dropped them, were the pieces of thunder. Margaret had carefully gathered everything and placed them in a small shoebox next to the telephone table. Ethan looked around, making sure he was completely alone. Then, silently, he took the little box and hid it under his jacket. The company van had left hours ago. Ethan would walk to the nearest bus stop, as he did on the rare occasions he missed his ride. But this time, he didn't mind the long walk in the cold pre-dawn air. During the entire journey home, he held the box carefully, as if carrying something sacred. And in a way, that's exactly what it was. He arrived at his small apartment at 3:30 in the morning. Sam was fast asleep, his teddy bear, Bruno, clutched to his chest. Ethan gave his son a silent kiss on the forehead and went to the kitchen. He turned on only the small lamp over the table and opened the box. The pieces of thunder were all there. The head separated from the body, the chipped front leg, the threads of the mane scattered about. It seemed impossible that this could ever again be the little horse Emily loved so much. But Ethan had learned a few things in life. His own father had been a carpenter before he died, and he had grown up watching wood being transformed into beautiful objects with patience and dedication. Maybe he could do something. He searched through the drawer of tools he kept for small apartment repairs. Wood glue, fine sandpaper, a small craft knife, a few brushes left over from when he painted Sam's room. It wasn't much, but maybe it would be enough. Ethan began by examining each piece carefully. The break at the neck was clean, which would make gluing it easier. The front leg was chipped but not completely broken. The threads of the mane were intact, just loose. He started with the hardest part, reattaching the head to the body. He applied glue to both surfaces and pressed them together gently, holding them firmly for several long minutes to ensure they bonded properly. While he waited for the glue to dry, he worked on the chipped leg. With the fine sandpaper, he smoothed the rough edges of the chip, trying to make everything even. It was meticulous work that required total concentration. The hours passed without Ethan noticing. At 5 in the morning, he was still sitting at the kitchen table, working under the dim light of the lamp. The glue on the head had dried, and he carefully tested the strength of the seam. It seemed solid. Now came the most delicate part, reattaching the mane. Each brown thread had to be individually glued back into the right place for Thunder to look the same as before. Ethan worked thread by thread, remembering how the mane looked when he first saw the horse whole. At 6 in the morning, he heard Sam stirring in his room. Soon the boy would be up for breakfast, and Ethan wasn't finished yet. He quickly put everything away in a drawer and prepared oatmeal for his son, as if it were a normal morning. "Dad, did you sleep?" Sam asked, rubbing his eyes. "I slept a little," Ethan lied, serving the oatmeal in a colorful bowl. "You look tired." "I'm fine. Eat slowly, we're not in a hurry today." After Sam finished his breakfast and went back to his room to play, Ethan resumed his work. Only a few threads of the mane and the final touches were left. With a small brush, he applied a thin layer of varnish over the seam on the neck to better conceal it. By 8 in the morning, Thunder looked almost as good as new. The seam on the neck was nearly invisible, the chipped leg was smooth and even, and the brown mane swayed gently as it had before. It wasn't perfect, you could still see a few marks if you looked very closely, but it was whole again. Ethan held the little horse in the palm of his hand and smiled for the first time in 2 days. Thunder was back. He put the toy in a small bag and hurried to get ready. He couldn't be late for work, especially not today. The van picked him up at the usual time. During the entire ride to the mansion, Ethan held the bag on his lap, anxious to see Emily's reaction. He arrived at the mansion at 7:30, as always. Margaret greeted him with a distracted nod, not noticing the bag he was hiding under his coat. Ethan went up to the second floor and carefully placed Thunder on the small table next to Emily's bed. The little horse stood there perfectly, as if it had never left. Ethan took one last look to make sure everything was right, then went downstairs to start the day's work. He didn't have to wait long. At 8:30, he heard a scream from the second floor, but it wasn't a scream of despair like the day before. It was a scream of pure joy. "Thunder! Thunder, you're back!" Emily's footsteps echoed down the hallway, coming down the stairs at a dangerous speed. She appeared in the hall, still in her pajamas, clutching the little horse to her chest, tears streaming down her face, but this time they were tears of happiness. "Margaret, Margaret, look!" she shouted, running to the kitchen. "Thunder is all better." "He's not broken anymore." Margaret appeared, wiping her hands on her apron. "What do you mean, dear?" "Look." Emily showed her the horse, radiant. "He was on my table when I woke up, all fixed up." Margaret took Thunder and examined him carefully, surprised. "But how? Who did this?" "I don't know," Emily laughed, a crystal-clear sound that filled the house with joy. "It was magic. Thunder fixed himself." Ethan continued cleaning the living room windows, pretending not to hear the conversation, but he couldn't hide the smile spreading across his face. "Emily, toys don't fix themselves," Margaret said, still examining the horse. "Someone repaired this and did a very good job." "Who?" Emily asked, her eyes shining with curiosity. Margaret looked around, and her eyes met Ethan's through the window. She watched him for a long moment, seeing the smile he was trying to hide. "I think I know who it was," she said softly. Emily followed Margaret's gaze and saw Ethan on the other side of the window. Immediately, her eyes widened. "Was it you?" she shouted, running to the living room door. Ethan stopped cleaning and turned to her, not knowing what to say. "Emily, But he couldn't finish the sentence. Emily ran to him and hugged him with all the strength her 5-year-old arms could muster. She still held Thunder in one hand, but used her other arm to cling to Ethan's leg. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," she cried, hugging him. "You brought my Thunder back." Ethan stood still for a moment, too emotional to react. Then, slowly, he knelt and hugged Emily back. "I'm glad he's okay," he whispered. "How did you do it?" she asked, pulling away just enough to look into his eyes. "Mommy said he couldn't be fixed." "Sometimes things that seem impossible just need a little patience and love," Ethan replied. Emily hugged him again, even tighter. "You're the kindest person in the whole world," she murmured. "Thunder missed you too, you know." "How do you know?" "Because I told him you were our friend." Emily showed him the horse, and now he's smiling again. Ethan looked at Thunder and had to admit, somehow, the little horse really did seem to be smiling. "Can I tell you a secret?" Emily whispered. "Of course. I made a wish last night. I wished for Thunder to be all better again." She smiled, her clear eyes shining. "And you made my wish come true." At that moment, looking at the girl, radiant with happiness, hugging the mended horse, Ethan knew he had done the right thing. It didn't matter how many hours of sleep he had lost, or how much glue he had used, or how his back ached from being hunched over the kitchen table all night. Emily was happy again. Thunder was whole, and the bond between them had become something unbreakable. "Can I hug you again?" Emily asked. "Always," Ethan replied. And as she threw herself into his arms once more, he knew he had gained something far more precious than any salary. He had gained the complete trust of a child who desperately needed to believe that there were still good people in the world. Thunder's brown mane swayed against Emily's arm, and for an instant, Ethan could almost hear Charles Blackwood's voice whispering, a thank you on the wind. 3 days had passed since Thunder had magically reappeared, all fixed on Emily's table. For Ethan, it was 3 days of watching a complete transformation in the girl. She walked around the house humming softly, smiled at all the employees, and carried Thunder everywhere like a good luck charm. The change was so obvious that even Veronica, always immersed in her own affairs, began to notice. On Thursday morning, Ethan was cleaning the entrance hall when he heard Emily's voice echoing down the stairs. She was running down as usual, but this time there was no sadness in her steps, just pure joy. "Mommy, Mommy, look what Thunder did this morning," she shouted, jumping down the last few steps. Veronica was standing near the large mirror, adjusting her white blazer before heading out for another day of meetings. She turned with that slightly annoyed expression she always wore when Emily interrupted her morning routine. "Emily, you know I don't like it when you shout in the house." "Sorry, Mommy." Emily lowered her voice, but couldn't hide her excitement. "But you have to see. Thunder saved an ant that was drowning in the fountain." Veronica looked at the wooden horse Emily was holding so lovingly and frowned. "What do you mean, sweetie?" "He dove into the water and brought the ant to the edge." Emily made Thunder gallop in the air. "I saw everything." Daddy always said Thunder was very brave. It was the first time in weeks that Emily had mentioned her father without crying. Veronica noticed this immediately. "Emily, you seem different these past few days." "Different how?" "Happier." Veronica knelt down to be at her daughter's level, something she rarely did. "Ja, you're smiling again." Emily hugged Thunder to her chest. "It's because Thunder is all better now. Now we can play together again, just like I did with Daddy." Veronica was silent for a moment, observing the genuine happiness on her daughter's face. It had been weeks since she'd seen Emily like this. "Emily," she said slowly. "Who fixed the little horse?" The question was asked casually, but Ethan, who was pretending to be busy polishing the banister, felt his heart race. Emily didn't hesitate for a second. "It was the janitor." "Mommy!" The cleaning cloth slipped from Ethan's hand and fell to the marble floor with a soft thud. Veronica turned immediately in his direction, her eyes narrowing. "Sa's the janitor." "Yes," Emily nodded enthusiastically. "Ethan fixed Thunder for me. He did magic. Thunder was broken and now he's brand new." Veronica stood up slowly, her gaze fixed on Ethan. He bent down to pick up the cloth, his hands trembling slightly. "Is that right?" Veronica asked, her voice neutral. Ethan swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes, Mrs. Blackwood. Mommy, he's so good, Emily continued, running to Ethan and grabbing the sleeve of his uniform. He made Thunder perfect again. Veronica watched the scene for a long moment. Her daughter, who had been downcast and tearful for weeks, was now radiating happiness. And all because of the man in the blue uniform she barely noticed most days. "Ethan," she said finally, "I need to speak with you in my office now." The tone was firm but not hostile. Still, Ethan felt a chill in his stomach. Was he going to be fired? Had he crossed a line he shouldn't have? "Mommy, he didn't do anything wrong," Emily protested, as if she could read his thoughts. He just helped Thunder get better." "Emily, go have breakfast with Margaret," Veronica said. "I need to talk to Ethan about work." Emily looked worriedly between her mother and Ethan, but obeyed. Before leaving, she ran to Ethan and whispered, "Don't worry. Thunder will protect you." Veronica watched her daughter leave the room and then headed to the office without another word. Ethan followed her, his heart pounding in his chest. Veronica's office was imposing. Mahogany bookshelves, a huge glass desk, a view of the gardens. Veronica sat behind the desk and gestured for Ethan to sit in the chair in front of her. He remained standing. "You can sit," she said. "I'd prefer to stand, ma'am." Veronica watched him for a moment, then sighed. "Ethan, how long have you been working here?" 8 months, ma'am. And during these 8 months, you've always been an exemplary employee. Punctual, efficient, discreet." Ethan didn't know where she was going with this, so he just nodded. "That's why I'm curious," Veronica continued. "What made you decide to fix my daughter's toy?" The question was direct, but there was something different in Veronica's tone. It wasn't hostility. It was genuine curiosity. "I saw how upset she was when the toy broke," Ethan answered honestly, "and I knew how much it meant to her." "How did you know?" Ethan hesitated. Should he tell her about his conversations with Emily, about the stories she had shared about her father? "She told me about the little horse a few times," he said, choosing his words carefully. "They're about how her father had made it with love. I realized it wasn't just a toy to her." Veronica was quiet for a long moment, looking down at her own hands. "My daughter talked to you?" "Sometimes, Mum. Just quick conversations. She's a very polite little girl." "And what did you talk about?" Ethan didn't want to get Emily in trouble, but he couldn't lie to Veronica either. "About simple things. About the garden. About drawings she made. About what life is like outside the mansion." Life outside the mansion. She was curious about how people who don't have as much money live. She asked about my apartment, about how different it was from this house. Veronica stood up and walked to the window overlooking the garden. She stood there for a moment, watching the spot where Emily always played. "For the past 2 years," she said, without turning around, "since my husband died, I've dedicated myself completely to work. I thought I was doing it for Emily, to secure her future, to maintain the standard of living she was used to." Ethan said nothing, sensing that Veronica needed to talk. "But watching her these past few days, seeing how happy she is because of a single gesture of yours, I realized something I didn't want to admit." Veronica turned to face him. "You gave my daughter what I couldn't. You gave her attention, affection, time." "Mrs. Blackwood, please, let me finish." Veronica went back behind her desk. "Emily smiles more because of you than she has smiled because of me in months. It hurts, but it's the truth." Ethan felt uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "You're a good mother. You just work a lot." "I'm an absent mother," Veronica corrected with brutal honesty. "And you, a stranger she's known for just a few weeks, managed to do something I couldn't. You brought her joy back." Veronica opened a desk drawer and took out a checkbook. "I want to reward you for what you've done. How much would you like?" "Nothing, ma'am." Veronica looked up, surprised. "What do you mean, nothing?" "I don't want money for what I did," Ethan spoke firmly. "I did it because Emily is a special child who was hurting. It wasn't a job. It was an act of kindness." "Ethan, be reasonable. You spent hours fixing that toy. You deserve compensation. With all due respect, ma'am, I won't accept. If I take money for it, it will seem like I did it for personal gain, and I didn't. Veronica studied him for a long moment, as if seeing him for the first time. Do you have a family, Ethan? I have a son, ma'am. How old? 6. And his mother? She died in childbirth. Veronica nodded slowly. So you understand what it's like to raise a child alone? Yes, ma'am. Does your son go to school? Ethan hesitated. It was a personal question, but Veronica seemed genuinely interested. Not yet, ma'am. He's 6, but the good schools in the area are expensive. I'm saving money to enroll him next year. What about the public schools? They're not very good where I live. I dream of giving him a better education, but I can't afford it yet. Veronica looked thoughtful for a few moments, then closed the checkbook and put it back in the drawer. Ethan, you said you don't want money for what you did for Emily. I can respect that. She paused. But can I offer you something different? What do you have in mind, Mom? A raise, Veronica spoke directly. Not as payment for the horse, but because I've realized you are an exceptional employee. Someone who genuinely cares about the people in this house. Ethan blinked, surprised. Ma'am, I'm going to double your salary, Veronica said. I want you to be able to give your son what my daughter already has, an education. Ethan was speechless for a moment. I don't know what to say. Say you accept. Veronica smiled, and for the first time since Ethan had known her, the smile seemed genuine. Consider it my way of repaying you, indirectly, for what you did for Emily. But, Ma'am, that's too generous. I don't know if I deserve... You deserve it. Veronica stood up. Anyone who spends the whole night fixing the broken toy of a child who isn't even their own deserves much more than I can offer. Ethan felt his eyes well up. Thank you, Mum. Thank you so much. The raise starts next month. Veronica walked to the office door, and Ethan, Yes, ma'am. Thank you. For giving me my daughter back. In the days that followed, Ethan could hardly believe what had happened. With the new salary, he would finally be able to enroll Sam in the private school he had always dreamed of. On Monday morning, he took his son to visit Greenwood Elementary School, a small but excellent institution known for its dedicated teachers and welcoming environment. Is this where I'm going to study, Dad? Sam asked, his eyes wide as he looked at the colorful playground and well-equipped classrooms. This is it, Ethan confirmed, smiling. It's very different from the school you showed me before. It's much better. Ethan knelt to his son's level. You're going to learn so many important things here. You'll make friends. You'll have teachers who care about you. Like you care about me. Exactly like I care about you. Sam hugged his father tightly. Thank you for working so hard to give me this. At that moment, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Genuine pride. Not just for being able to enroll his son in a good school, but for how he had managed it. It wasn't charity. It wasn't a favor. It was the result of his own effort, his work, his dedication. Veronica had given him an opportunity, but he had earned it. He had proven his worth not just as an employee, but as a person. And now, finally, he could give his son what he had always dreamed of, a real chance at a better future. When they returned home that afternoon, Sam ran to his room to play, excited about the prospect of his new school. Ethan stood in the small kitchen, looking out the window and thinking about how life could change in unexpected ways. It had all started with a simple gesture, fixing a sad little girl's broken toy, and it had turned into an opportunity that would change his own son's life forever. Sometimes, Ethan thought, the biggest miracles come disguised as the smallest acts of kindness. Thunder was fixed, Emily was happy, and Sam would get the education he deserved. Everything was falling into place. Veronica sat in her office, but for the first time in months, she couldn't concentrate on the reports in front of her. The numbers seemed blurry. The spreadsheets made no sense. Her mind was somewhere else entirely. 3 weeks had passed since her conversation with Ethan, and the change in Emily was impossible to ignore. The girl woke up singing, came down the stairs skipping with joy, and carried thunder everywhere with a smile that lit up the whole house. But it wasn't just Emily's happiness that bothered Veronica. It was the source of that happiness, An employee had managed to do in a few weeks what she, the mother, had failed to do in 2 years: bring joy back to her daughter. Veronica closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair, finally allowing herself to think about what she had been avoiding for days. How had she reached this point? How had she become a stranger in her own daughter's life? The answer hit her like a punch to the gut, gradually, choice by choice, one misplaced priority after another. She remembered when Charles died. Emily was only 3, too young to understand why her father would never come home again. Veronica, devastated by the loss, threw herself into work as a means of escape. It was easier to deal with numbers and contracts than with her daughter's tears and her own. "It's temporary," she told herself at the time. "Yeah, just until I can reorganize the company, until I can ensure Emily has financial stability." But the months turned into years, and Veronica never left that survival mode. Work became not just a necessity, but a refuge. In the office, she was in control. At home, there was the pain of Charles's absence and the responsibility of being a single mother. Veronica stood up and walked to the window. Down below in the garden, she saw Emily playing near the fountain. She was talking excitedly to Thunder, creating some elaborate adventure where the little horse saved the day. It was then that the memory hit Veronica with full force. Emily running to her with the broken horse in her little hands, tears streaming down her face, begging for help. And she, Veronica, treating it like a minor inconvenience. "Don't cry, sweetie. I'll buy you another one, a much better one." The words echoed in her mind like a slap. How could she have been so cold? How did she not realize it wasn't about the toy, but about the last tangible connection between Emily and her father? Veronica closed her eyes, remembering the expression on Emily's face at that moment. The disappointment, the deep sadness, the way the girl had suddenly stopped crying, not because she was comforted, but because she realized it was pointless. "So I'll buy you another one, a much better one," as if love could be bought, as if memories could be replaced with money. Veronica sat down again, this time completely ignoring her work. How long had it been since she'd had a real conversation with Emily? How long had it been since she'd asked about her daughter's dreams, about what made her happy or sad? She realized with horror that she barely knew what Emily's favorite foods were, or if she liked cartoons, or what kind of games she enjoyed. It was Margaret who knew these things. It was Margaret who listened when Emily woke up from a nightmare. It was Margaret who knew her daughter, and now it was Ethan who could make her smile. Everyone but her own mother. Veronica remembered how different it was when Charles was alive. He always found time for Emily, no matter how busy he was. He would come home from work and immediately look for his daughter to hear about her day. On weekends, he created imaginary adventures, told stories, played in the garden. "Kids don't need expensive things," he used to say. "Size, they need time and attention." At the time, Veronica thought he was exaggerating. After all, being able to give Emily the best of everything was a privilege few parents had. Why not use that privilege? Now she understood. Emily had everything money could buy, but she didn't have what truly mattered: her mother's emotional presence. Her cell phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was the office, probably with some urgent matter that only she could handle. Veronica looked at the screen, hesitated for a moment, and then did something she had never done before. She turned off the phone and put it on silent mode. She stood up and walked to the window again. Emily was still in the garden, now making Thunder gallop along the edge of the fountain. The girl was laughing to herself, completely absorbed in her imaginary world. If I had lost that smile, Veronica thought, watching her daughter, no amount of money could bring it back. The revelation was like a lightning bolt. For 2 years, she had focused on building a financial empire for Emily, but had almost lost Emily herself in the process. She had almost allowed her daughter to grow up feeling invisible in her own home. Ethan had shown her this without a single word of criticism. Simply by being present, by being attentive, by being what a child needed an adult to be. Veronica made a decision. She went down the stairs and out into the garden. Emily saw her approaching and stopped playing, surprised. Her mother rarely came to the garden, especially during work hours. "Hi, Mommy," Emily said, hugging Thunder to her chest. "Are you done with work?" "I'm not done," Veronica replied, sitting on the grass next to her daughter. But I decided there are things more important than work." Emily looked at her with curiosity. "Like what?" "Like spending time with you." Veronica smiled, and for the first time in a long time, it wasn't a forced smile for cameras or clients. It was genuine. "Can I play with you guys? With Thunder and me?" Emily's eyes lit up. "Say if you'll both have me on your adventure." Emily nodded enthusiastically and began to explain the game. Thunder was exploring a mysterious island, searching for hidden treasure and helping animals in danger. Veronica was surprised by her daughter's creativity, by the rich detail of the stories she invented. How had she not noticed before how smart and imaginative Emily was? "Mommy, can you do the voice of the princess that Thunder is going to save?" Emily asked. I don't know if I'm very good at that." "Please." Daddy always made different voices. Veronica felt a pang in her chest at hearing Emily mention Charles. But this time it wasn't just pain, it was also determination. "Of course I can try." They spent the next hour playing together. Veronica made silly voices, invented characters, laughed at Emily's innocent jokes. She felt muscles in her face that she hadn't used in months, the muscles for smiling and genuine laughter. At one point, Emily stopped playing and looked at her seriously. "Mommy, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetie. Do you have to go to work now?" The question broke Veronica's heart. Emily was used to stolen moments, to the constant expectation that her mother would have to rush off to handle some work, emergency. "No," Veronica said firmly. "Today I'm staying with you. Work can wait." The smile that spread across Emily's face was the most beautiful Veronica had ever seen. It was in that moment that she truly understood what she had almost lost. That night, for the first time in 2 years, it was Veronica who put Emily to bed. She read a story, had Thunder say goodnight to all the stuffed animals, and sat on the edge of the bed until Emily fell asleep. When she returned to her own room, Veronica didn't turn on her laptop. Instead, she stood on the balcony, looking out at the garden where they had played together, planning how different things would be from now on. Ethan had given her much more than an exemplary employee. He had given her a lesson on what truly mattered in life, and Veronica was determined to never forget that lesson again. It was on a Saturday afternoon that Ethan had a conversation that would change everything. He was finishing putting away his cleaning equipment when Veronica appeared in the storage room, which was unusual for her. "Ethan, can I talk to you?" "Of course, Mrs. Blackwood." "Emily asked me today if Sam could come over to play with her." Veronica spoke directly, but there was something different in her tone. Softer. "Guy told her I needed to talk to you first." Ethan was surprised. Sam always asked about Emily, curious about the girl his father sometimes mentioned. But he never imagined that she was also curious about him. "I don't want to cause any trouble, ma'am. If you don't think it's appropriate—" "Actually, I think it would be good for Emily," Veronica interrupted. "Though she spends too much time alone. Having a friend her own age might be exactly what she needs. Sam is a good boy. Polite, affectionate. Emily talks a lot about him. It seems you've both told her stories about each other." Ethan smiled. Sometimes she would ask what it was like to have a sibling. "I would tell her about Sam and she'd get curious. So if you agree, they can meet. Maybe next Saturday. You can bring Sam when you come to work." Ethan felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Are you sure, Mom?" "I am," Veronica smiled. "And Ethan, you can just call me Veronica when we're talking about the kids. We're both parents, aren't we?" "That puts us on the same level." The following Saturday, Ethan arrived at the mansion with Sam by his side. The boy was wearing his best clothes, a light blue t-shirt and clean jeans, and was holding his teddy bear Bruno under his arm. "It's so big, Dad," Sam whispered, looking at the mansion with wide eyes. "It is big. But remember what we talked about. Be polite. Say please and thank you and behave yourself." "I will behave." Sam nodded seriously. "I promise." Emily was waiting for them at the back door, practically bouncing with anticipation. When she saw Sam, she became shy for a moment, hiding behind Margaret. "Hi, Emily," Sam said, also a little shy. "Si, my dad talks about you a lot." "Hi, Sam." Emily stepped out from behind Margaret, clutching Thunder to her chest. "Is that Bruno?" Sam held up the teddy bear. "It is. He's my best friend. And this is Thunder. My daddy made him for me. My dad showed him to me after he fixed him. He's really nice." Emily smiled, and the shyness began to fade. "Do you want to see the garden? There's a fountain where we can make boats." "Can I really?" "Of course. Come on." Within minutes, the two were running through the garden as if they were old friends. Emily showed him all her favorite spots, the secret corner near the roses, the big tree where she sometimes sat to think, the fountain where Ethan had taught her to make leaf boats. Sam was impressed by everything, but what caught his attention the most was Emily's imagination. She transformed the garden into a land of adventure, where every bush was a mountain, every flower was a castle, and Thunder and Bruno were brave heroes exploring unknown territories. "Can Bruno be Thunder's squire?" Sam asked, excited. "Of course," Emily clapped her hands. "They'll make a super strong team." Ethan watched from a distance, pretending to work on the nearby windows. Seeing the two of them playing together warmed his heart in a way he couldn't explain. Sam was laughing more than he had in weeks. Veronica was also watching from her office window. She had cancelled her Saturday meetings, something she never did, just to be around and see how the meeting went. "Margaret," she called, going down to the kitchen. "How are they getting along?" "Like two peas in a pod," Margaret answered, smiling. "So they haven't stopped talking and laughing." I've never seen Emily so excited about another child. That's because Sam is a special boy, just like his father. His heart is in the right place. During lunch, Veronica did something that surprised everyone. She invited Sam to eat in the formal dining room, along with Emily. "You don't have to go to any trouble, Mum," Ethan said. "Sam can eat in the kitchen with me." "Nonsense. The children want to have lunch together, don't you?" Veronica looked at Emily and Sam. "Would you two like that?" "Can we really, Mommy?" Emily asked. "Can I, Dad?" Sam looked at Ethan, uncertain. "If Mrs. Blackwood is inviting you, you can call me Aunt Veronica," she said to Sam. "And of course you can. Any friend of Emily's is welcome here." Lunch was a revelation. Sam behaved perfectly, using please and thank you at every opportunity. Emily was delighted when he complimented the food and politely asked if he could have more juice. "Do you go to a cool school, Sam?" Emily asked. "I do." Sam's eyes sparkled. "It's a new school and the teachers are really nice. I'm learning to read big words." "What kind of words?" "Yesterday I learned elephant and bicycle," Sam said with pride. "And friendship too." "I know how to write friendship." Emily perked up. "I can teach you after lunch." Veronica watched the interaction and felt something stir in her chest. It had been so long since she had seen Emily so enthusiastic about something other than thunder. "Sam," she said gently, "would you like to come here again? Emily loves having company." Sam looked at his father, who nodded. "I'd love to, Aunt Veronica." "Thank you." Thus began a routine that would completely transform the atmosphere of the mansion. Every Saturday, Sam came to the mansion. Sometimes Ethan had to work, and sometimes he just brought his son to play with Emily. The two children created a world of their own. They invented elaborate games where Thunder and Bruno were the protagonists of epic adventures. They built pillow forts in the living room. They had pillow fights in Emily's room. They painted pictures together at the table on the veranda. The sound of their laughter echoed through the once silent hallways. Margaret smiled more. Veronica found herself stopping her work just to listen to the cheerful voices coming from the garden, and even the other employees commented on how much more alive the house seemed. "It's remarkable," Margaret said to Ethan one of those afternoons. "In 40 years of working in family homes, I've never seen such a big change. It was as if this mansion had pneumonia, and now it can finally breathe." Ethan knew exactly what she meant. The coldness that had always characterized those hallways was giving way to something warmer, more human. One day, Veronica surprised everyone by coming down to the garden in the middle of the afternoon, still wearing her work suit. "Can I play with you?" she asked Emily and Sam. "Of course, Mummy." Emily ran to her. "We're playing school. Sam is the teacher and I'm the student." "And what is Teacher Sam teaching today?" Veronica joked. "Professor Sam," he corrected, laughing. "I'm teaching Emily how to do addition. And I'm teaching him how to do different voices for the characters in stories," Emily added. Veronica sat on the grass, not caring that her expensive suit might get dirty. "Can I be the school principal?" The children burst into laughter and ran to hug her. Ethan watched these scenes from a distance, always moved. Seeing Sam so happy, so integrated, growing up in an environment where there was affection and acceptance, filled his heart with gratitude. The months passed quickly. Sam adapted perfectly to his new school, and every weekend he would run to show his notebooks to his father. "Look, Dad," he would say, opening his handwriting notebook. "The teacher said my handwriting is getting really good." "It really is, son. I'm so proud. And look at this essay about my family. I wrote about you and about Emily too. The teacher said family isn't just who lives in the same house, it's who we love." Ethan read the essays with teary eyes. Sam wrote about the father who worked hard to give him the best, about the special friend who had a big house, but an even bigger heart, about how good it was to have people who cared about you. Emily was also radiant. She carried thunder everywhere. But now he had company. Bruno stood beside him in their imaginary adventures. The two children created elaborate stories where the two toys were inseparable companions, saving the world together. "You know what I like most about Sam?" Emily said to Ethan one day. "He listens to my stories and makes them even better, just like Daddy used to do. He likes you a lot too. We promise to be best friends forever." Emily hugged Thunder. "Well, Thunder and Bruno are best friends now too." "That's a very special friendship." "It is," Emily smiled. "And do you know why it's really special?" "Why?" "Because it started because of you. If you hadn't fixed Thunder, I would have been too sad to make any friends." One Sunday afternoon, Ethan was sitting on the back porch, watching the children play in the garden, when Veronica approached. "May I sit?" she asked. "Of course." They sat in silence for a few minutes, just watching Emily and Sam chase butterflies, shouting with joy every time they managed to get close to one. "Thank you," Veronica said suddenly. "For what?" "For bringing your son here, for letting Emily have a real friend." She paused. "For showing me how happy my daughter can be. Sam is very happy too. He's never had a friendship like this." "They complete each other, don't they?" Veronica smiled. Emily saw that Sam has little money, but a lot of love. Sam teaches Emily that the best things in life are free. They're two special kids, with parents who love them very much. Veronica looked at Ethan. "That's what we have in common, isn't it? Above any difference in class, money, or social standing, we're parents who would do anything for our children." Ethan nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. "That's right. Sometimes I think Sam teaches Emily as much as she teaches him. She's learning that there are different ways to live to be happy. And he's seeing that he can dream big, that he can have ambitions. They've taught each other that true friendship has nothing to do with money, and they've taught us that sometimes the best things in life come from where we least expect them." At that moment, Emily and Sam ran up to them, breathless and smiling. "Dad! Aunt Veronica!" Sam shouted. "We found a bird's nest. And there are 3 babies inside," Emily added. "They're so tiny and cute. Can you come see?" Sam asked. Veronica and Ethan stood up, each being pulled along by an excited child. As they walked through the garden, Ethan looked around and barely recognized the place. The same mansion, the same garden, but everything seemed different. There was life here now, joy, human warmth. The children's laughter echoed off the cold stones of the hallways, warming every corner. The staff smiled more. Even the sunlight seemed brighter as it shone through the windows. The mansion was no longer just a place where rich people lived, isolated from the world. It had transformed into a home where 2 different worlds met and created something beautiful together. And it had all started with a broken horse and the kindness of a man who decided to fix it. Sometimes Ethan thought as he watched the children. The biggest miracles really do come from the simplest gestures. A year had passed since Thunder broke and was mended, and the transformation at Blackwood Manor was complete. Ethan woke up every morning with a peace he hadn't felt in years. The small apartment remained the same, but now there was a sense of stability that permeated every corner. The bills were paid, Sam was thriving at school, and for the first time since Sarah had died, Ethan could sleep without worrying about tomorrow. "Dad, look at my math grade," Sam shouted one morning, running into the kitchen with his report card in hand. "A+. Ethan hugged his son, pride written all over his face. "I'm so proud of you. The teacher said I can join the math competition next year. Can I, Dad?" "Of course you can," Ethan smiled, remembering how he used to worry about just keeping Sam in school. Now, he could dream of competitions, of college, of a bright future for his boy. At the mansion, the changes were even more evident. Veronica arrived at work on time, but she left at the right time to have dinner with Emily. Weekend meetings had practically disappeared, replaced by afternoons in the garden and visits to the park with her daughter. Even more impressive was how she treated the staff. She knew everyone by name, asked about their families, and offered help when someone was going through a tough time. Margaret commented to Ethan that in 40 years of work, she had never felt so respected. "She even asked if I wanted to reduce my workload," Margaret said, impressed. "She said she noticed I was getting more tired and that I could hire an assistant if I needed one." "And are you going to accept?" "I am. At 65, it's about time I slowed down a bit." Emily had blossomed like a flower that finally received sun after a long winter. She laughed loudly in the hallways, greeted all the employees with enthusiasm, and had created a routine of activities that involved both her mother and Sam. In the afternoons, the three of them would gather in the garden for what Emily called adventure time. Thunder and Bruno lived out epic rescues, explored fantastical worlds, and always made it home in time for dinner, a tradition Emily had preserved from her time with her father. "You know what I discovered?" Emily said to Sam one of those afternoons. "Daddy is still here with me. He's in Thunder, in the stories I tell, and in the love I feel for you all." Sam, now 7 and wiser, nodded gravely. "My mum is always with me too, even though I don't remember her. Dad said love doesn't disappear when people go away." "That's true," Emily hugged Thunder, "and now I have you guys too." It's like my family got bigger. On a golden autumn afternoon, Veronica and Ethan were sitting on the back porch, watching the children play in the garden. Emily had created a new adventure where Thunder and Bruno had to save all the leaves falling from the trees, and the two of them ran across the lawn collecting yellow and red leaves. "Sometimes I still can't believe it," Veronica said, watching Emily laugh as Sam helped her carry a huge pile of leaves. "How much everything has changed." "Kids have that power," Ethan replied. "They remind us of what really matters. You came into this house as an invisible man and ended up changing everything." Veronica turned to look at him. "Thus, you changed Emily, you changed me, you even changed the other employees. How did you do it?" Ethan was thoughtful for a moment, watching Sam help Emily build a mountain of leaves. "Sometimes, it's not the size of the gesture, it's the heart you put into it." He smiled. "I just fixed a broken toy. But I did it with love, and love has the power to fix much more than wood." Veronica nodded, her eyes misty. "Thunder taught us all, didn't he, that the most valuable things aren't the most expensive ones, they're the ones made with love, with dedication, with time and care. And that everyone deserves a second chance. Thunder was broken, but he wasn't lost. Just like all of us." The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Emily and Sam ran across the garden one last time before dinner, their laughter echoing across the property. Thunder galloped in Emily's hand, his brown mane blowing in the wind, the marks from the repair almost imperceptible in the golden light. There he was, a simple wooden horse, made by a loving father, broken by life, mended by the kindness of a stranger. He wasn't perfect, he still had scars that told his story. But he was whole, he was loved, and he carried with him the proof that even the most broken things can become symbols of hope. The future had blossomed at Blackwood Manor, and Thunder galloped happily towards it. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.